Hello guys, in this video we're going to be doing the gubernatorial predictions for each of these states here. Now let's open up with the first few states. Hawaii's governor is not going to be that competitive. California, not that competitive. New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island at this point, it's not showing signs of a competitive race. I'm putting a solid Democratic over a victory margin over 10%. Same with Maryland. The Republican nominee here is just pretty much a Trump person, and that's Trump people don't win in blue states, especially like Massachusetts or Maryland. They're both going to lose by double digits. Illinois, he's a strong governor, J.B. Pritzker. I mean, he may not have the best approval rating, but it's a positive one. And I think that's just enough to win. Illinois typically always has pretty unpopular governors, so that's the first time in a while that any governor from Illinois has a good approval rating, so I think he'll win by over 10% against the Republican. In Vermont and New Hampshire, these are very popular liberal Republicans. They'll probably easily win here. Oklahoma, Nebraska, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho. These states are not going to be competitive whatsoever. Alaska could be competitive with the independent candidate, and they have ranked choice voting, which means I'll categorize as likely. I still think the Republicans will prevail here. Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, definitely locks for Republicans here. Ohio and Iowa, decently popular Republican governors in both these states, especially Mike DeWine. Probably definitely win by double digits here. Very strong with independents, I would say. Same with the Republican in Iowa. She has decent approval ratings here, and I think she'll probably cruise to victory come November. And Kansas, this is going to be one of the first Republican flips. I think the Democratic governor here really doesn't have the best chances here. Even the polling shows it's within 4%. I highly doubt that. I think it's probably going to be a likely state. Probably a 6 to 7 point victory for the Republican here in the state of Kansas. State of Texas, it's almost a safe Republican state. It's just teetering on an 8 to 9 point victory for Greg Abbott against Beto O'Rourke. The race is going away from Beto, and at this point, I don't really expect him to win. In Florida, I think DeSantis will have a very comfortable victory against Crist, probably by around 6 points, I would say. But Charlie Crist would do decent among independents here, but overall, I don't see him beating Ron DeSantis, who has decent approval ratings in the state of Florida. In Georgia, Brian Kemp's doing a spectacular job on campaigning to moderate independents, and I think he'll really come through with around a 5% victory against Stacey Abrams here. Even though she's a very strong candidate, I just think more independents are going to be voting for Brian Kemp because they appreciate what he did and refusing to go along with Trump's false claims about the election was stolen in the state of Georgia. I think voters are going to reward him for that, especially independents who don't believe all that pretty much bullshit that Trump's been peddling. All right, so the state of Colorado, I think it's going to be about a likely state, almost safe, I would say, but I think it'll be decently competitive because it is a neutral year, I am assuming. Which few states will do? I guess we'll do Connecticut. The Democratic governor here has very good approval ratings, but I do think the Republican nominee here could give him a run for his money for a bit, but I still think the Democrat's going to win by 8 to 9 points in the state of Connecticut against his Republican opponent. In Maine, again, Democrats are consistently leading here, usually in the likely margin, but I'm going to say it's going to be about lean. I'm assuming it'll be a 3 to 4 point victory for the Democrat here. In the state of Pennsylvania, it's currently Josh Shapiro is currently leading here by around a likely margin in the polling against Mastrianino, and I don't really think he's going to win here, the Republican. He's pretty extreme. Him rambling about the voting machines and how the election was stolen doesn't really sit well with a lot of independent Pennsylvania voters. And honestly, I think Josh Shapiro is going to be doing a bit better than John Fetterman here. I think he's going to win by around 5 to 6 points, I would say Shapiro would win by. Just because I think voters are going to be kind of concerned that the Republican, if he wins here, would overrule the election if a Democrat wins here in 2024. So I currently rate this as a likely state for the Democrats, and the polling pretty much shows that in some polls he's leading by 10 points against his Republican opponent, Josh Shapiro. I think he's going to be probably cruising to an easy victory come November. In Michigan, it's kind of the tale of the same story. Republicans do not have a good nominee whatsoever. Tudor Dixon is not popular with swing voters. Way too radical, and she's catering way too much to Trump with his election lies. I don't think Tudor Dixon's going to be able to beat Gretchen Whitmer. She's a fairly popular governor, and I anticipate her to win by 8 to 9 points against her Republican opponent, whoever it may be. Minnesota, I think, will have a bit more of a competitive governor race, but I still think Tim Walz will win here by about 4 points because he's running against someone who's pretty much a COVID denier, and I don't think that's going to help him with independent voters that well. Vaccine deniers typically don't do well in swing states or the Rust Belt, I would say. The state of Wisconsin, I would say that Tony Evers, I still think he's going to lose, probably by a very narrow tilt margin. I just think that his approval ratings are just barely or positive or just barely negative. I think the Republicans might be able to edge him out here, but just by a very narrow margin. I'm probably going to go back and forth in Wisconsin in the coming months. But so far, I think the Republicans will edge out Tony Evers here. State of New Mexico, I don't think the Republicans are going to edge out the Democratic incumbent here. I still think she's going to win, but it's going to be a very competitive race. It's one of the races to watch in the 2022 midterms. I definitely think that, but I think the Democrats will edge out the Republicans here. State of Oregon, we have an independent, a Democrat, and a Republican running. And there's going to be a lot of vote splitting, which is why the result in Oregon will only be a narrow Democratic victory by a lean margin, I would say. Keep an eye on this state. There's an independent running. The state could get fairly competitive, but I still think the Democrats will be able to pull through with a victory here. State of Arizona with Kari Lake. She's not the worst nominee, and I think polling's underestimating her. But I think this is a true coin flip of a race. But I think Kari Lake will be able to narrowly win the state for Republicans here come November, just by a pretty narrow margin. While the state of Nevada, I think Sisolak will hold on here as the governor here in Nevada. He has decent approval ratings, which is why I think he'll survive. So that's my 2022 gubernatorial predictions for the month of August. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments below. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.